The text message wasn't meant for me. I can't wait to see you again. David's working late tonight, so come over around 9. Wear the cologne I bought you. Your naughty wife. Except I was David, and I definitely hadn't received any cologne from my wife recently. I stared at my phone screen in the parking lot outside our daughter's soccer practice, watching Emma sprint across the field in her bright yellow jersey, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to shatter. The message was time-stamped 3:47 p.m. It was now 4:15. My hands shook as I screenshot the text before it could disappear. Sarah had always been careless with technology, but this was a new level of stupid. Or maybe she'd gotten so comfortable in her betrayal that she'd stopped caring about covering her tracks. I should have seen it coming. The late nights at her marketing firm had started 6 months ago. The new workout routine. The way she'd recoil when I touched her, claiming she was tired, stressed, or had a headache. The expensive lingerie I'd found in her drawer that she'd never worn for me. But I'd been willfully blind, throwing myself into my work as a software engineer and convincing myself that marriage was just like this after 12 years. People grew apart. Romance faded. It was normal. Normal wives didn't sex their lovers using their husband's contact by mistake. Emma scored a goal and turned to wave at me through the chain-link fence. I forced a smile and gave her a thumbs up, my heart breaking as I realized this might be one of the last moments of her innocence. At 10 years old, she still believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She still thought mommy and daddy loved each other. The drive home was a blur. Emma chattered about her game, about her friend Madison's birthday party next weekend, about the science project she needed help with. I nodded and made appropriate responses while my mind raced through possibilities. Confront Sarah immediately? Hire a private investigator? Call a lawyer? Our house came into view. A 2-story colonial in an affluent suburb of Chicago that we'd bought when Sarah's career took off. I'd always felt slightly out of place here among the other power couples, but Sarah thrived in this environment of keeping up appearances. "Dad, you're quiet tonight," Emma said as we pulled into the driveway. "Just thinking about work, sweetheart." The lie came easily. Too easily. Sarah's BMW was already in the garage. Through the kitchen window, I could see her moving around, probably preparing dinner, playing the role of the devoted wife and mother, just like she had every night for months while planning her betrayal. We walked through the front door and Sarah greeted us with her usual performance. "There's my soccer star." She swept Emma into a hug, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite allegedly working all day. "How was practice?" "I scored 2 goals." Emma bounced on her toes. "Dad got it on video." "That's wonderful, honey." Sarah's eyes met mine over Emma's head. Her smile was warm and genuine, the same smile that had made me fall in love with her 15 years ago. "David, how was your day?" The casual way she said my name, the same name she'd used in that text, made my stomach turn. "Productive," I managed. "Very productive." Something flickered in her expression, too quick to interpret. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Why don't you two wash up?" As Emma bounded upstairs, Sarah stepped closer to me. She smelled like expensive perfume and something else. Guilt, maybe, or excitement. "Everything okay? You seem tense." I studied her face looking for any sign of remorse or anxiety. There was nothing. She was either a sociopath or an Oscar-worthy actress. "Just a long day." "I think I'll shower before dinner." "Good idea." She reached up to straighten my collar, a gesture that once would have seemed affectionate. Now it felt like she was adjusting a prop. "Maybe we can talk later about us? About things." "Things?" "Well, we haven't been connecting lately. I was thinking maybe we should make more of an effort." The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning to screw her lover tonight while suggesting we work on our marriage. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her, demand answers, force her to explain how she could look our daughter in the eye while destroying our family. Instead, I nodded. "Sure, we should definitely talk." That night, I barely slept. I kept the misdirected text screenshot, but I knew I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't make any moves while Emma was home and potentially watching. I had to wait for the right moment to begin gathering real evidence. The next 3 weeks were torture. I maintained the facade of a normal husband while documenting Sarah's patterns. Her work emergencies happened every Tuesday and Thursday, always lasting until past midnight. She'd started working out at a gym that was suspiciously close to downtown where Marcus Rodriguez's company was located. I used my lunch breaks to conduct preliminary research. Marcus Rodriguez was indeed the CEO of TechFlow Dynamics, a tech startup that had signed with Sarah's firm 8 months ago, right around the time her behavior had started changing. Married with 3 kids living in Lake Forest. His LinkedIn profile showed he was an ambitious climber, the type of man Sarah had always been attracted to. But I had to be careful. I couldn't risk Emma overhearing phone calls to lawyers or private investigators. Every piece of evidence gathering had to happen when she was at school or at friends' houses. Finally, 3 weeks after discovering the text, I got my opportunity. Emma was invited to spend the weekend at her friend Madison's house. A genuine sleepover, not one of Sarah's fabricated alibis. Work emergency, Sarah announced Friday evening, following her usual script. I need to run to the office for a few hours. This time, I was ready. After she left, I carefully went through her laptop. Sarah Chen had been sloppy in more ways than just that text message. Her laptop was synced to her phone, and she'd never bothered to change the password we'd shared for years. Emma 13, the year our daughter was born. Her text history was a goldmine. Months of increasingly explicit messages with Marcus Rodriguez, photos that made my stomach lurch. Plans for weekend getaways that coincided with her supposed work conferences. Detailed discussions about my schedule, my habits, my obliviousness. He's so goddamn clueless, she'd written just last week. Sometimes I think he knows and just doesn't care. Makes it easier, I guess. Marcus had responded. Poor bastard. When are you going to leave him? Soon. Just need to figure out the custody situation. Emma loves him, and I can't afford a messy divorce right now. Better to wait until the partnership decision comes through. Partnership. Sarah had been up for senior partner at her firm for the past year. The promotion would come with a significant salary increase and equity stake, community property that would be subject to division in a divorce. She wasn't just cheating, she was calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to maximize her financial gain while minimizing the damage to her career and reputation. I spent the entire weekend documenting everything while Emma was safely at Madison's house. Screenshots, downloads, printouts. I created a detailed timeline of her affair, complete with dates, locations, and the increasingly brazen nature of her deception. By Sunday evening, when Emma returned home full of stories about her sleepover, I had enough evidence to destroy both their lives. But I needed professional help to do it right. How did the emergency go? I asked from the living room where I'd been pretending to watch late-night television. Resolved, thankfully. She didn't meet my eyes. Morrison's happy. Crisis averted. Good. Come sit with me for a minute. She hesitated. I'm pretty tired. Maybe we should talk tomorrow? Please, just for a few minutes. She perched on the edge of the couch as far from me as possible while still being on the same piece of furniture. The woman who'd once curled up against my chest during movies now treated me like I had a contagious disease. Sarah, do you love me? The question seemed to surprise her. She blinked several times before answering. Of course I love you. We're married. We have Emma. That's not what I asked. A longer pause. David, where is this coming from? I've been thinking about us lately, about our marriage, about whether we're happy. Something shifted in her expression. A calculation. She was wondering if I knew something or if this was just a coincidence. Are you happy? She asked carefully. Are you? We stared at each other for a long moment. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once and fell quiet. I think, Sarah said slowly, that we've both been going through the motions for a while now. Maybe we should consider counseling? Counseling, another delay tactic. Another way to buy time while she figured out her exit strategy. Maybe we should, I agreed. I'll look into it. She smiled, relieved I thought, and stood up. Good, I'm glad we talked. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. I watched her walk upstairs, noting the slight limp that hadn't been there when she left for her work emergency. Marcus Rodriguez had quite the appetite, apparently. 3 days later, I met with the best divorce attorney in Chicago. Helen Morrison, no relation to Sarah's fictional client, was a shark in a $1,000 suit. Her office overlooked Lake Michigan, and her wall was covered with framed newspaper articles about high-profile divorce cases she'd won. Sarah's law school graduation photo hung in our hallway. Helen Morrison had probably destroyed dozens of women just like my wife. Mir Chen, she said after reviewing my evidence, this is one of the most well-documented cases of adultery I've seen in 20 years of practice. Your wife's communications leave no room for doubt about the nature and duration of her affair. What are my options? Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still be relevant for property division and custody. Given the evidence, we can argue that your wife's infidelity constitutes marital misconduct that justifies an unequal distribution of assets in your favor. She opened a file folder and spread out several documents. More importantly, the fact that her affair is with a client creates serious ethical issues. I've already done some preliminary research on Marcus Rodriguez. His company, TechFlow Dynamics, represents approximately 30% of your wife's firm's revenue. The relationship appears to have begun around the same time his company signed their contract, which suggests a quid pro quo arrangement. What does that mean for Sarah? Helen smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. It means your wife could be facing disbarment proceedings, which would make that partnership she's hoping for rather unlikely. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered more evidence while maintaining the facade of a normal marriage. Sarah continued her affair with increasing boldness, sometimes not coming home until 2 a.m. She'd started going to a gym that happened to be 2 blocks from Marcus's office. She'd booked a weekend getaway to Door County for the following month, supposedly a solo retreat to think about our marriage. Meanwhile, I'd hired a private investigator to fill in the gaps. The photos he provided were explicit and damning. Sarah and Marcus entering a hotel together during her lunch break, kissing in the parking lot of an upscale restaurant, shopping for lingerie at a boutique downtown. Emma noticed the tension, of course. Children always do. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked one evening while I helped her with algebra homework. The directness of the question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Madison's parents got divorced last year. They acted like you and Mom do now. All fake nice and weird." I set down my pencil and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She had Sarah's dark hair but my eyes, and right now those eyes were filled with a wisdom no 10-year-old should possess. "Would that scare you, if we got divorced?" "I guess. But Madison says it's better now that her parents aren't fighting all the time. She gets 2 bedrooms and twice as many Christmas presents." Despite everything, I smiled. "Yeah, you're pretty smart, you know that?" "I know." She grinned, and for a moment she was just a normal kid again. "So are you getting divorced?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But if we do, it won't be your fault, and both Mom and I will always love you. That part will never change." She nodded solemnly, then returned to her homework like we'd been discussing the weather. That night, Sarah announced she needed to work late again. I kissed her goodbye like a dutiful husband, then called my private investigator. "She's at the Ritz-Carlton downtown," Mike confirmed an hour later. "Presidential suite. Rodriguez checked in this afternoon." "Perfect. How long until you can get me photos?" "Give me 30 minutes. They're not exactly being subtle." While I waited, I opened my laptop and began implementing the plan I'd been developing for weeks. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its scope. First, I sent an anonymous email to the Illinois State Bar Association's ethics hotline, complete with documentation of Sarah's relationship with Marcus and its potential impact on her legal representation of his company. The complaint was thorough, professional, and damning. Second, I forwarded the same information to Marcus's wife, Elena Rodriguez, along with a carefully worded note expressing my sympathy for what she was about to discover. I'd done my research on Elena. She was a prominent socialite who served on several charity boards and had a reputation for not tolerating disrespect. Third, I sent a detailed package to the managing partners at Sarah's firm, documenting her affair and its ethical implications. I'd timed the delivery for early Monday morning when the senior partners would be preparing for their weekly review meeting. Finally, I sent copies of everything to 3 different gossip blogs that covered Chicago's legal and business communities. Sarah valued her reputation above almost everything else. By Tuesday morning, her professional life would be in ruins. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Got what you need. She's in for a surprise tomorrow." The photos were even better than I'd hoped. High-definition images of Sarah and Marcus in compromising positions, taken through the hotel room's floor-to-ceiling windows. The timestamp showed they'd been there for hours. I printed copies of everything and organized it into neat folders. One for Helen Morrison, one for Elena Rodriguez, one for Emma when she was old enough to understand why her family fell apart, and one for myself as a reminder of what Sarah really thought of our marriage. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, fitting for what I'd planned. Sarah left for work early, humming again as she kissed my cheek goodbye. She had no idea that by noon, her entire world would be collapsing. I worked from home that day, ostensibly to wait for a furniture delivery, but really to monitor the fallout. The first call came at 10:15 a.m. Mr. Chen, this is Janet Phillips from Morrison, Phillips and Associates. We represent your wife. I need to speak with you immediately about some allegations that have come to our attention. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. What allegations? A pause. Sir, I think it would be better if we discuss this in person. Are you available this afternoon? I scheduled the meeting for 2 p.m., then sat back to wait for the next shoe to drop. It came in the form of a phone call from Sarah at 11:30. David, her voice was tight, controlled, I need to come home. Now. What's wrong? You sound upset. Just, please, I'll explain when I get there. She arrived 20 minutes later, her face pale and her hands shaking. For the first time in months, she looked genuinely vulnerable. We need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how much I knew. David, someone's been spreading lies about me. Horrible, malicious lies. They've sent packages to my firm, to the state bar, to... She choked back what might have been a sob. Someone's trying to destroy my career? What kind of lies? They're claiming I'm having an affair with a client. They've fabricated evidence. Photos that look real but aren't. Text messages that have been doctored. I blinked at her with what I hoped looked like confusion and concern. Sarah, that's terrible. Who would do something like that? I don't know. The mask slipped completely, revealing the panic underneath. But whoever it is knows details about my life, my schedule. It has to be someone close to us. Have you called the police? The police? She laughed bitterly. David, even if they catch whoever did this, the damage is done. My partners are having an emergency meeting this afternoon. The state bar has opened an investigation. My reputation is ruined. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the text messages, the lies, the casual way she'd planned to destroy our family for her own gain. I'm sure it will work out, I said. The truth always comes out eventually. She looked up at me sharply. Something in my tone had given me away. You know, she said quietly. You know about Marcus. There was no point in pretending anymore. I know about everything, Sarah. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, I could hear Emma's school bus pulling up to the stop at the end of our street. How long? She asked. I've known for 3 weeks. I've had evidence for 2. And you did this? You sent those packages? I did. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Why? Why didn't you just confront me? We could have worked this out, gone to counseling, figured out how to fix our marriage. Could we have? Because from what I read in your text messages, you weren't planning to fix anything. You were planning to wait until your partnership came through, then divorce me and take Emma and half of everything I've built. Her face flushed red. Those messages were taken out of context. Were they? Because it seemed pretty clear to me. You called me clueless. You discussed timing the divorce to maximize your financial gain. You planned to take my daughter away from me. Emma is my daughter too. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to screw your client. The front door slammed as Emma came home from school. Sarah and I both froze, listening to our daughter's footsteps in the hallway. Mom, Dad, I'm home. In here, sweetheart, I called out. Emma bounded into the living room, dropping her backpack by the door. She looked from Sarah to me, immediately sensing the tension. Is everything okay? Sarah tried to compose herself, but her eyes were red and her hands were still shaking. Everything's fine, honey. Mom and Dad were just having a grown-up conversation. Emma wasn't buying it. She'd been watching us too closely for too long. Are you getting divorced? She asked again. This time, I answered honestly. Yes, sweetheart, we are. Sarah's intake of breath was sharp enough to cut glass. We'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. Is it because Mom has a boyfriend? Both Sarah and I stared at our daughter in shock. Emma, Sarah started, but our daughter cut her off. I'm not stupid. I know what work emergency means. Madison's mom used to have lots of work emergencies too, right before the divorce. The three of us sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma walked over and hugged me. It's okay, Dad. I still love you both, but I want to live with you. Sarah made a wounded sound, but Emma's decision was clear and final. At 10 years old, she'd chosen sides. That afternoon, while Sarah was at her firm's emergency meeting, which resulted in her immediate suspension pending the ethics investigation, I met with Elena Rodriguez. She was exactly what I'd expected. Impeccably dressed, coldly furious, and absolutely ruthless. We met at her attorney's office in the Loop, and she got straight to business. Mr. Chen, I want to thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. My husband's indiscretions have cost our family dearly, but at least now I know what I'm dealing with. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Don't be. I'm not interested in your pity. She slid a folder across the table. I'm interested in your cooperation. I opened the folder to find detailed financial records for Marcus's company. TechFlow Dynamics was deeper in debt than its public filings suggested, and a significant portion of its cash flow was dependent on the contract with Sarah's firm. My husband's affair with your wife isn't just personal, Elena continued. It's been propping up his failing business. I've already spoken with my attorneys about pursuing civil charges for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. What do you need from me? Testimony, documentation, proof that the affair influenced your wife's legal advice to my husband's company. She smiled coldly. In exchange, I'll make sure your divorce proceedings go very smoothly. Elena Rodriguez had connections throughout Chicago's legal and business communities. An alliance with her would be invaluable and devastating to Sarah and Marcus. What did you have in mind? 3 days later, Sarah was officially terminated from her firm. The ethics investigation was ongoing, but her partners couldn't risk the scandal affecting their other clients. Her name was removed from the letterhead, her office was cleared out, and her access to the building was revoked. Marcus fared even worse. Elena had filed for divorce and was seeking an emergency injunction to freeze all of TechFlow's assets pending an investigation into potential fraud. Without the protection of Sarah's firm, and with their affair now public knowledge, Marcus was facing both personal and professional ruin. But the real coup de grace ici came from an unexpected source, Sarah's mother. Margaret Chen had always been a formidable woman. A retired federal judge, she'd instilled in Sarah a strong sense of right and wrong, or so I'd thought. When the scandal broke, I expected her to rally around her daughter. Instead, she called me. David, I owe you an apology, she said during our lunch meeting in Chinatown. I've been watching Sarah for the past few years, and I've seen troubling signs. The ambition, the willingness to cut corners, the way she treated you and Emma like accessories to her career, rather than family. You knew? I suspected, but I told myself it was just the pressure of her job, the competitive nature of her field. Margaret shook her head sadly. I was wrong. What she's done to you, to Emma, to her own marriage, it's unforgivable. She reached into her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope. This is a letter I wrote to the family court judge handling your divorce case. Judge Williams is an old colleague of mine. I've detailed my observations about Sarah's fitness as a mother and my recommendation that Emma remain in your primary custody. The letter was devastating. Margaret laid out a pattern of emotional neglect, describing how Sarah had missed school events, forgotten important dates, and treated Emma more like an obligation than a beloved child. Coming from her own grandmother, a respected former judge, it would carry enormous weight in custody proceedings. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because Emma deserves better, because you deserve better, and because sometimes the only way to teach someone about consequences is to let them face them fully. That evening, I finally had the conversation with Emma that I'd been dreading. Sweetheart, there are some things about the divorce that you need to understand. We were sitting in her bedroom, surrounded by the posters and stuffed animals of her childhood. In a few months, this room would be in a new house, in a new life that didn't include her mother as a daily presence. Is Mom going to jail? She asked with a directness that still surprised me. No, honey. She made some bad choices, but they weren't the kind that send people to jail. But she can't be a lawyer anymore? It's complicated. She might be able to work as a lawyer again someday, but not for a while. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Madison's mom says that when parents cheat, it's because they're selfish and immature. I winced. Emma, that's a pretty harsh way to put it. But it's true, isn't it? Mom chose her boyfriend over us. There was no good answer to that. Sarah had made her choices, and now Emma was living with the consequences. Sometimes adults make mistakes, I said carefully. Big mistakes that hurt the people they love. Do you still love Mom? The question hung in the air between us. Did I still love Sarah? The woman I'd married 15 years ago, yes. But that woman had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone calculating and selfish and cruel. I love the mom you used to have, I said finally. But people change, and sometimes they change into someone we can't live with anymore. Emma hugged me tightly. I'm glad I get to stay with you. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Helen Morrison had been right. The evidence of adultery, combined with Elena Rodriguez's testimony about the financial irregularities and Margaret Chen's character assassination, left Sarah with virtually no leverage. She kept the house but had to take on the full mortgage payment without her law firm salary. I got primary custody of Emma, along with most of our liquid assets and my retirement accounts. Sarah's cheating had cost her not just her marriage but her career, her financial security, and her relationship with her daughter. The final hearing was anticlimactic. Sarah sat at the defendant's table looking hollow and defeated, her expensive suit hanging loose on her diminished frame. Marcus wasn't there. He was dealing with his own divorce proceedings and the criminal investigation into his company's finances. When Judge Williams pronounced our marriage officially dissolved, I felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, no closure. Just emptiness where 15 years of shared history used to be. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, Sarah approached me one last time. David, please, can we at least try to be civil for Emma's sake? I looked at the woman who had once been my everything. She'd lost weight, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. The affair had aged her in ways that went beyond the physical. I'll be civil, I said, but I'll never forgive you. And Emma will make her own decisions about whether she wants you in her life. She's my daughter. Then you should have acted like it. 6 months later, Emma and I had settled into our new life. We'd moved to a smaller house in a different suburb, something I could afford on my single income. Emma had adjusted well, making new friends and throwing herself into soccer and science club. Sarah had found work at a small firm that specialized in personal injury cases, a significant step down from her previous position. She was renting a one-bedroom apartment and driving a used Honda instead of her BMW. The state bar had suspended her license for 2 years, but she was eligible to apply for reinstatement after completing an ethics course and paying substantial fines. Marcus hadn't been as fortunate. TechFlow Dynamics had collapsed under the weight of Elena's investigation, and he was facing both civil and criminal charges for fraud. His marriage was over, his business was bankrupt, and his reputation was destroyed. He'd moved back in with his parents while his legal troubles played out. The gossip blogs had eventually moved on to other scandals, but the damage to both Sarah and Marcus was permanent. In Chicago's tight-knit legal and business communities, their names were synonymous with unethical behavior and poor judgment. One evening, while Emma was at a sleepover and I was grading papers for the computer science course I'd started teaching part-time, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Sarah standing on my front porch. I debated not answering, but curiosity won out. Hello, Sarah. Hi. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Can we talk? Please. I stepped aside to let her in, noting how strange it felt to have her in this new space that she'd never been part of. Everything here was mine and Emma's, no shared memories, no ghosts of our former life. What do you want? I wanted to apologize, really apologize, not the legal kind. I know it's too late to fix anything, but I needed to say it. She sat on the edge of my couch, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. I was wrong, she continued. About everything. About Marcus. About our marriage. About Emma. I was selfish and cruel, and I hurt the two people I should have protected. Why? I asked. Why did you do it? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. I don't know. That's the honest answer. I was ambitious, and I felt like our marriage was holding me back. Marcus made me feel important, powerful. He admired my success in a way that well, that I thought you didn't. I was proud of your success, Sarah. I always was. I know. I realize that now. But at the time, I felt like you were just comfortable, like you'd settled for the life we had, and I wanted more. So you decided to take it, regardless of who got hurt. Yes. The admission was barely a whisper. I told myself I deserved to be happy, that I was entitled to have everything I wanted. I didn't think about the consequences until it was too late. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, I could hear neighborhood kids playing in someone's backyard, their laughter carrying through the evening air. How is Emma? Sarah asked finally. She's good. Really good. Her grades are excellent. She's made new friends and she seems happy. Does she ever ask about me? I considered lying, but decided she deserved the truth. Sometimes, but less than she used to. Sarah's face crumpled slightly. I know I don't have the right to ask, but could I see her? Just for an hour or two? I miss her so much. That's not my decision to make anymore, Sarah. If Emma wants to see you, we can arrange something. But I won't force it. She nodded, wiping away tears that had started falling. I understand. Is there anything else? Just, I want you to know that you were a good husband, a good father. What happened wasn't your fault. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back deck, thinking about the woman Sarah had been when we first met. Young, idealistic, passionate about justice and fairness. Somewhere along the way, she'd lost those qualities, replaced them with ambition and entitlement. Maybe that change had been inevitable. Maybe the seeds of her betrayal had always been there, waiting for the right circumstances to bloom. Or maybe she'd simply made a series of small compromises that led to one enormous mistake. It didn't matter anymore. The Sarah I'd loved was gone, and the woman who'd replaced her was a stranger. I'd mourned the loss of our marriage, but I'd also discovered something unexpected. I was happier without her. The constant tension, the feeling of walking on eggshells, the sense that I was never quite good enough, all of that was gone. Emma bounded through the front door the next morning, full of stories about her sleepover and plans for the day. As I made her breakfast and listened to her chatter, I realized that we'd not just survived Sarah's betrayal, we'd thrived despite it. Dad, Emma said as she finished her pancakes, Madison's mom is taking us to the movies this afternoon. Can I go? Of course. What are you going to see? Some superhero thing. It's probably going to be dumb, but Madison really wants to see it. I smiled at her casual dismissal of what was probably a $100 million blockbuster. Sometimes dumb movies are the most fun. That's what Madison says. She paused, studying my face. You look happy today. Do I? Yeah. You look like you did before everything happened with Mom. I feel happy, I admitted. I feel like we're going to be okay. We are okay, Emma said with the confidence of youth. We're better than okay. We're perfect. And looking at my daughter, brilliant, resilient, loving despite everything she'd been through, I realized she was right. We were perfect. Not in the way our family had been before, but in a new way that belonged entirely to us. 2 weeks after Sarah's unexpected visit, I received a call that changed everything again. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Morrison with the Chicago Police Department. We need to speak with you about Marcus Rodriguez. My blood went cold. What about him? He's been found dead in his apartment. Apparent suicide. We're conducting interviews with anyone who had recent contact with him. I met the detective at the police station that afternoon, leaving Emma with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Detective Morrison was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. When was the last time you had contact with Mr. Rodriguez? She asked. I never had direct contact with him. Everything went through attorneys. But you were instrumental in exposing his affair with your wife. Yes, I provided evidence to various parties. She made notes in her file. Mr. Chen, I'll be direct with you. Rodriguez left behind a note. In it, he mentions you specifically. He claims you orchestrated a campaign to destroy his life. I documented his affair with my wife and shared that information with relevant parties. His wife, the state bar, his business partners. I didn't force him to have the affair. No, but according to his note, you did more than just document it. He claims you manipulated evidence, bribed witnesses, and used your technical skills to fabricate some of the digital proof. My mouth went dry. Marcus had been more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. That's a serious accusation, I said carefully. It is. We're going to need to examine your computers, your phone records, your financial accounts. If there's any truth to what Rodriguez claimed, you could be looking at charges ranging from fraud to conspiracy. The next week was a nightmare. Police seized my electronics, froze my bank accounts, and questioned everyone in my life. Emma stayed with her grandmother while investigators turned our new house upside down. But Marcus had made a fatal error in his final act of revenge. He'd waited too long to voice his suspicions. The evidence I'd gathered was real. I'd simply been very thorough and very lucky in timing. The digital forensics experts found no signs of manipulation in the photos, text messages, or financial records. More importantly, Elena Rodriguez and several other witnesses confirmed that Marcus had been acting erratically for months before his death. His business was failing, his marriage was over, and he was facing potential criminal charges for fraud that had nothing to do with me. The affair with Sarah had simply been the final straw. After 2 weeks of investigation, the charges were dropped. The police concluded that Marcus's accusations were the desperate lies of a man who couldn't accept responsibility for his own actions. But the damage to my reputation was significant. Word of the investigation had spread through Emma's school, my workplace, and our new neighborhood. People whispered about the man who might have driven another man to suicide. I was sitting in my lawyer's office discussing potential defamation suits against the media outlets that had covered the story when Helen Morrison delivered unexpected news. David, I've received an interesting call from Sarah's attorney. She wants to meet. About what? Apparently, she has information about Marcus Rodriguez that she thinks might interest you. Information that could clear your name completely. Against my better judgment, I agreed to the meeting. We met at Helen's office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Sarah looked terrible, gaunt, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said without preamble. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I have something you need to know." She slid a folder across the conference table. Inside were printed emails and text messages I'd never seen before. "Marcus was planning to frame you," she continued. "He'd been working on it for months, ever since the divorce proceedings started. He was convinced that you'd somehow manipulated the evidence against us, and he wanted revenge." I scanned the documents. They showed Marcus researching my background, my technical skills, my work history. He'd been building a case that I was some kind of criminal mastermind who'd orchestrated his downfall. "He asked me to help him," Sarah said quietly. "He wanted me to sign an affidavit claiming that you'd threatened me, that you'd forced me to cooperate in some elaborate scheme. He even offered to pay me. What did you say?" I told him no. "Whatever else I've done, I won't let him destroy you with lies." She met my eyes for the first time since sitting down. "You destroyed my life with the truth. There's a difference." The documents were damning. They showed that Marcus had been planning to file false police reports, fabricate evidence, and potentially plant illegal materials on my computer. His suicide note wasn't a final confession. It was the opening move in a posthumous frame job that he'd been planning for months. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked. "Because Emma deserves to have a father who isn't in prison for crimes he didn't commit. Because despite everything, you're a good man who didn't deserve what Marcus was planning to do to you." She paused, gathering herself. "And because I owe you this much, I owe you the truth." With Marcus's plot exposed, the cloud of suspicion hanging over me finally lifted. The police investigation was reopened, this time focusing on Marcus's planned frame job rather than my alleged crimes. His computer revealed even more evidence of his scheme, including researched methods for planting evidence and falsifying documents. The media coverage shifted dramatically. Instead of being portrayed as a possible manipulator who'd driven a man to suicide, I was now the victim of an elaborate revenge plot by a dead sociopath. The sympathy was gratifying, but it couldn't undo the weeks of stress and uncertainty. Emma returned home after the charges were officially dropped, but she'd been affected by the ordeal more than I'd initially realized. "Dad, are we safe now?" she asked one night as I tucked her into bed. We're safe, sweetheart. The bad guy is gone, and everyone knows you didn't do anything wrong. But what if there are other bad guys? What if Mom's friends want to hurt us too? The paranoia in her voice broke my heart. She was 10 years old and already learning that the world could be a dangerous place full of people who would hurt innocents to get what they wanted. There are no other bad guys, I assured her. And even if there were, I would never let anyone hurt you. That's what dads are for. What about Mom? Is she safe? The question surprised me. Despite everything Sarah had done, Emma still worried about her. Mom is safe. She's not involved in any of this anymore. Good, Emma said, settling into her pillows. I don't want anything bad to happen to her, even if she was mean to us. 3 months later, I ran into Sarah at Emma's school spring concert. Our daughter was performing in the choir, and Sarah had apparently been invited by Emma herself, the first contact they'd had since my conversation with Sarah months earlier. She called me last week, Sarah explained as we waited in the auditorium for the performance to begin. She said she wanted me to hear her solo. How did it go? The call? Hard. She asked me a lot of questions I didn't have good answers for, but she said she missed me. We sat in awkward silence as parents filled the seats around us. I noticed several people staring and whispering. Our story had been local news for months, and we were probably the most famous divorced couple in the district. David, Sarah said quietly, I heard about what Marcus tried to do to you. I'm sorry for all of it. You helped expose his plan. That means something. Does it? I still destroyed our family. I still chose my own selfish desires over Emma's well-being. Helping you avoid a frame job doesn't make up for that. The lights dimmed before I could respond, and Emma's choir took the stage. When my daughter stepped forward for her solo, a beautiful rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, both Sarah and I had tears in our eyes. After the concert, Emma ran over to us with a huge smile. Did you hear me? Did I do good? You were amazing, I said, hugging her tightly. Beautiful, honey, Sarah added, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. Are you coming to the reception? Emma asked her mother hopefully. Sarah looked at me questioningly. I nodded slightly. For a little while, Sarah said, if that's okay with your dad. The reception was awkward but civil. Sarah stayed close to Emma, listening to her chatter about school and friends and soccer. I watched them together and saw glimpses of the mother Sarah had been before ambition and selfishness had consumed her. When it was time for Sarah to leave, Emma hugged her tightly. Will I see you again soon? Emma asked. That's up to your dad, Sarah replied, glancing at me. We can arrange something, I said. Maybe lunch next weekend? Emma beamed, and Sarah looked genuinely grateful. As we drove home that night, Emma was unusually quiet. What are you thinking about, sweetheart? Do you think Mom really changed? Like, is she sorry for real? It was a complicated question with no easy answer. I think she's sorry, I said carefully. Whether she's really changed, that's something only time will tell. I want to see her more, but I still want to live with you. That's fine. We can work out a schedule that makes you happy. And Dad? Even if Mom gets better, we don't have to be a family again, right? I like it being just us. Just us is perfect, I agreed. Nothing will change that. 6 months later, Sarah had established a regular visitation schedule with Emma. Every other weekend and one evening per week, plus alternating holidays. It was working well. Emma seemed happier having her mother back in her life, even in a limited capacity. Sarah had completed her ethics course and was preparing to apply for reinstatement of her law license. She'd also started therapy and was attending meetings for people with codependency issues. Whether it was genuine change or just going through the motions remained to be seen, but Emma seemed to believe in her mother's redemption. I was less optimistic, but I'd learned to separate my feelings about Sarah as my ex-wife from her role as Emma's mother. As long as she didn't hurt our daughter, I could tolerate her presence in our lives. One evening, while Emma was at a friend's house and I was preparing for another semester of teaching, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Elena Rodriguez standing on my porch. I hadn't spoken to Elena since the police investigation ended. She'd sent a thank you card after Marcus's scheme was exposed, but we'd had no direct contact. Elena, this is unexpected. I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced. I have something for you. She handed me a thick envelope with my name written on it in elegant script. What is this? Marcus's life insurance payout. $2 million. I stared at the envelope in shock. I don't understand. Why would you give this to me? Because Marcus's suicide note specifically mentioned his intention to frame you for crimes you didn't commit. His death was directly related to his obsession with destroying your life. In my opinion, you're as much a victim of his actions as I am. Elena, I can't accept this. This money belongs to you and your children. My children and I are fine financially. Marcus had other insurance policies and I have my own assets. This particular policy was purchased just 6 months before his death, specifically to fund his revenge scheme against you. She stepped closer, her expression serious. David, Marcus cost you months of stress, thousands in legal fees, and nearly destroyed your reputation. He traumatized your daughter and put your freedom at risk. That money is blood money, and I want it to go towards something positive. What do you want me to do with it? Whatever you think is right, start a college fund for Emma. Donate it to charity. Use it to build the life that Marcus tried to destroy. She smiled slightly. Just don't let his final victory be leaving you financially devastated by his lies. After Elena left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the envelope. $2 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to secure Emma's future, pay off the house, maybe even retire early and spend more time with my daughter. But it felt tainted. Blood money, as Elena had called it. The final remnant of a man who tried to destroy my life out of spite and jealousy. I thought about Marcus Rodriguez as I'd seen him in Elena's photographs. Handsome, successful, arrogant. A man who'd thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. Even in death, he was still trying to manipulate the situation, to leave one final mark on the people he'd hurt. But Elena was right. His obsession with revenge had cost me dearly. Legal fees, lost income from missed work, the emotional toll on Emma and myself. We deserved compensation for what he'd put us through. The next morning, I called Helen Morrison. Helen, I need advice about something unusual. More unusual than anything else you've dealt with recently? That's saying something. I explained Elena's offer and my conflicted feelings about accepting it. David, from a legal standpoint, the money is rightfully yours if Elena chooses to give it to you. Marcus's insurance fraud and attempted frame job created damages that you could have sued his estate for anyway. But ethically? Ethically, you have a choice. You can view this as profiting from Marcus's death, or you can view it as compensation for the harm he caused you. I'd suggest the latter. That weekend, I had a long conversation with Emma about the money. So the bad man's wife wants to give us money because he tried to hurt us? She summarized. That's right. But I wanted to ask what you think we should do with it. Emma considered this seriously, her 10-year-old brain working through the moral complexities. Well, we should definitely put some in my college fund. And maybe we could give some to charity? Like the place that helps kids whose parents get divorced? Those are good ideas. What else? Could we travel? I've always wanted to see Europe, and maybe we could get a bigger house with a pool. I smiled at her practical approach. We could do all of those things if we're smart about the money. Then we should take it. The bad man can't hurt us anymore, but his money can help us be happy. That seems fair. Out of the mouths of babes. I accepted Elena's offer with the understanding that a significant portion would go to charitable causes, specifically organizations that helped children of divorce and victims of workplace harassment. The rest would secure our future and allow us to build the life that Marcus had tried to destroy. A year after the divorce was finalized, Emma and I were settled into our new normal. She was thriving in school, excelling at soccer, and had even started taking piano lessons. Our relationship was stronger than ever, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect that had been tested by fire. Sarah had been granted reinstatement of her law license after completing all required programs and paying substantial fines. She'd found work at a mid-sized firm that specialized in family law. Ironic, given her own family's destruction. But apparently, her personal experience gave her credibility with clients going through similar situations. Her relationship with Emma had improved significantly. They had weekly dinner dates, and Emma spent every other weekend at Sarah's apartment. It wasn't the family we'd once been, but it was functional and healthy for our daughter. Sarah had also started dating someone new, a divorced father of two who worked as a social worker. From what Emma told me, he seemed like a decent man who treated both Sarah and Emma with respect. I felt no jealousy at this development, only relief that Sarah had found someone who might keep her grounded. One evening, as Emma and I were having dinner at our favorite restaurant, she surprised me with a question. Dad, do you ever think about getting married again? Sometimes. Why do you ask? Because you seem happy now, like really happy. And I think you deserve to have someone who loves you the right way. Well, if I ever meet someone special, you'll be the first to know. But right now, I'm pretty content with our little family. Me too. But Dad? Yes? If you do meet someone, I want to interview her first. Make sure she's good enough for us. I laughed at her serious expression. Deal, but my standards are pretty high these days. Good. We Chen women don't settle for anything less than perfect. As we walked to the car after dinner, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. 2 years ago, I'd been a man living a lie, married to a woman who viewed me as an obstacle to her ambitions. I'd been sleepwalking through a life that looked perfect from the outside but was hollow at its core. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. It had forced me to rebuild my life on my own terms, to prioritize what truly mattered, and to discover that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Sarah's affair had destroyed our marriage, but it had also revealed the truth about who she really was, and who I really was. In trying to destroy me, she'd actually freed me to become the father and man I was meant to be. The revenge I'd taken hadn't been about cruelty or spite. It had been about justice, about ensuring that actions had consequences, about protecting my daughter from further harm. Sarah and Marcus had made their choices. I'd simply made sure they faced the full weight of those choices. Now, watching Emma skip ahead of me in the parking lot, chattering about her upcoming science project and weekend plans, I realized that the best revenge of all was the life we'd built together. We were happy, secure, and free from the toxicity that had once defined our family. Sarah had gambled everything for a few moments of excitement with a man who'd ultimately tried to destroy us both. She'd lost her marriage, her career, her reputation, and nearly lost her daughter. The price of her choices had been steep, and she'd paid it in full. But from that destruction, Emma and I had emerged stronger. We'd learned that we could survive anything as long as we had each other. We'd discovered that happiness didn't require a perfect family, it just required honest love and mutual respect. As we drove home through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, Emma fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window. I looked at my daughter, brilliant, resilient, loving, and knew that despite everything we'd been through, we'd ended up exactly where we were supposed to be. The perfect storm of Sarah's betrayal had torn our old life apart. But from those ruins, we'd built something better, something true, something that belonged entirely to us, and no one could ever take that away. In the end, that was the most complete victory of all.